Hello, welcome to the Seattle Overload podcast. We are going to be looking at the Seahawks' first 3 days of training camp. We're not able to broadcast on Twitter anymore, so if you are on YouTube, congratulations on being the only live viewers of this podcast. Please do get involved in the chat. Misfit, very good to see you. John Smith, good to see you too. Hey, John, little peek behind the curtain here, but I'm the one who starts the show. It's me. It's my fault. And Griff was here before me. I was putting some roast potatoes in the oven. It was very intense. They're in there now, so that's exciting.
What did you season them with?
They're in there with olive oil right now.
Okay.
However, I will be potentially adding some garlic. I will definitely add salt. I mean, they're going to be going with very seasoned lamb, so
okay.
I feel quite judged right now.
I'm not judging you. It was just an open-ended question, and perhaps I was too hasty in asking it.
What would you do? Like a bit of paprika or something, or?
Yeah, I would get a little spicy, sure.
You would?
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
I would.
So Griff has a great tweet in terms of work to promote that we will be using in this podcast. So, Griff tweets so much, at least one of them has to be good, right? But yeah, he's definitely hit it with this one. And then I have. I
don't know if I call it work. It was more like.
We did it at work.
It was more like it was more like an intersection of like stimming and hobby combined. And if I didn't do it, I would get really upset at myself. So.
Right. Fair. It was impressive though. And then I did a mic'd up detective on Mike McDonald, so please do check that out. In terms of the other thing I promised you guys, I'm watching that tonight. So we don't need to talk about that. We don't need to address that. We'll move on. Because Griff, I can see the pain.
I don't mind if you don't watch the Olympics. It's Master and Commander that I want you to watch.
Oh, no, we were watching the Olympics just now. Oh, my gosh. So Great Britain had this 20-year-old cyclist, and he was doing really well, and then his bike got a puncture, and he finished just off the medals. And I think if his bike hadn't had a puncture, he would have been arguably pushing for gold. So can you imagine? At least he's only 20, but like if you were 30,
yeah,
your only Olympics ever, and like you could have won, but you didn't because of through no fault of your own. Right. That would just suck.
Yeah, that would.
Some like spectator was necking a bottle of Burgundy and then threw it on the road, and you ran over a glass shard.
Yeah, that'd be rough.
The worst. All right, should we do this thing?
Let's do it.
That's not what we say. Yeah.
Hit it, Matty.
Welcome to the Seattle Overload podcast, where Griffin and I are going to be looking at the Seahawks training camp first 3 days. 3 days is a lot of time, especially in this point of the off-season, and there's so many storylines, so much news. We've got takes on that. We've also got a new Seahawks, extension, kind of a re-signing as they kind of often do. So lots to talk about. But first, we're going to begin with, I'm going to call it the biggest story out of the VMAC, which is Abraham Lucas. So we wondered when we would see him. Obviously, he underwent that knee surgery. The signs are not good. So Mike McDonald, July 24th, said he's not sure when Abe Lucas will be back on the field with his knee injury. Said all the things about him working hard. But given McDonald had been clear on when others would return, like linebackers Tyrell Dodson and Jerome Baker, who we will speak about a bit later, and given, I think even more damningly or troublingly, that Quentin McCurtis is now working at right tackle rather than right guard, and George Fant is obviously now the starting right tackle. This is bad, Griff. Like, there's no other way of interpreting this than this is bad.
Yeah, you want him out there earlier, but I don't know. What's the silver lining? Don't rush it, I guess.
The silver lining,
So
he hasn't come back too soon. Yes, there's a new offense, but there's only so many ways of playing right tackle in the NFL. Again, it was our questions before training camp though and you made the point that hey, there was always going to be a rehab after a surgery. Like it's not a second surgery, it's the first surgery, so it could be okay.
yeah, he
But
did say that he's running full speed, right?
yeah, that almost makes me more concerned because it's like,
Mm.
okay, so then what what is the hang up here? Why can't you give a deadline for when he'll be back on the field? What
Right.
or not a deadline, a time frame.
Yeah, yeah, strange, but wait and see, I guess. I mean, what else do you do?
Now, Monjombo pointing out in the chat, people are acting like George Fant is a death sentence, though he was doing really well last year, right, Griff?
George Fant as his replacement at right tackle.
Yes.
Um, I think he was fine, and I think that was the consensus in New York that he was decent. Which,
Mm-hmm.
hey, I'll take decent, especially out of a backup right tackle.
Yeah, I
Um,
think, and this is silly given, I mean, Fant is obviously was an incredibly athletic tester out of Western Kentucky, but I think the real concern would be he's 32 and you don't know when a guy could fall off a cliff, but
he was
tackles
with
can play for
Houston
a
last year,
while.
wasn't
Um, maybe. I'd,
he? I don't know where my. Yeah, he was with Houston last year
yeah,
in New York before that. Yeah.
yeah. And I mean, the signs were there in that Seattle signed him to a 2-year, $9 million deal. Like they obviously expected some uncertainty around Lucas. Just we saw how not having the two tackles in the offense hurt them,
Yeah.
and yeah, maybe
Good,
George Fant is
good
the
instrument.
hero of the season, the best free agent signing. We shall see.
And we have to remember he's also hedging against Cross as well because Cross got dinged up last year. Um, and Fans played both sides, left and right tackle.
Yes, indeed. All right. So there's also additional offensive line news, which is on the interior. Center Connor Williams, most recently with the Miami Dolphins, but then suffering an ACL injury, had a great visit coming off injuries, things like that. The timetable's a little bit up in the air. We'll see where it goes per McDonald. Adam Schefter reported that he cleared a physical with the Seahawks, but there's like the timeline is kind of unknown as to when he would sign.
Right.
McDonald said last year he did a great job at center, so I think that's where you'd find him if he was here.
And
Thoughts on that, Griff?
they said that they're entering negotiations, so I'm sure those negotiations are probably tethered to incentives relative to availability. I'm sure that will be,
That's what Schefter said, right?
yeah, right. What's being hammered out. So I watched him in Miami. He's incredibly good. He is not one of those centers that transcends the position the way that Kelsey or like Alex Mack does. He's one of those guys who, yeah, he's a center. He's truly a center, but he's at the very best of that run. So I mean, you're still talking about, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh best center in the league. I mean, as open-minded as I am with Oluwatimi being something real, and he could be good, above average, whatever. You absolutely take Connor Williams in a heartbeat over whatever the possibility of Oluwatimi is. It's a classic one in the hand is worth two in the bush. In this case, it's more like two in the hand with maybe one in the bush anyway. So you absolutely try to bring in Connor Williams, and even if that means you don't see him till October, you still take the swing, because it will be affecting 2025's cap anyway, with it being probably an incentive laden deal. Meaning the numbers would toll next year if he were to hit his incentives. They wouldn't toll this year as much outside of the base salary, I think. So anyway, it would be awesome, right? And then at that point, you'd have an interior three of Laken Tomlinson, who, if nothing else, at this point is very experienced and stays on the field You'd have Connor Williams in the middle, who's one of the best centers in the league. And then you'd have presumably Christian Haynes, who is an exciting right guard prospect. With him being an older guard, maybe would catch up to NFL speed than most rookies would. Older guard for a rookie, that is. So I don't know. That could be a pretty intriguing interior. So I don't know. I mean, are you how enthused are you by that? I mean, would this be team changing? Would this be paradigm changing for the interior if they got Connor Williams?
I mean, it says a lot about the interior of the offensive line that I actually wasn't as concerned about center, given, Olu's just physical profile and how he looked like he wasn't out of place there in the, brief action he got last season. It says a lot about the kind of question marks you have at both the guard spots. I mean, you shouldn't read too much into Anthony Bradford, who's made his way back, being the starter at right guard currently. Like, there's no reason Christian Haynes can't beat him out. If Haynes was unable to do that, you could look at it as in a positive way and be like, oh, well, that's great. Bradford must have improved a bit and, he's won the job. Good job. But I'd also be slightly disappointed if Haynes wasn't able to do that, as I know you would be too. On the left side, Tomlinson's best thing is his availability, right? I think he's okay. But this, if they are to sign Connor Williams, this would not suddenly be like, yay. I'd still be concerned about the interior of the offensive line.
Yeah.
And, it's incredibly important that Geno Smith is not the 6th most pressured quarterback next season and just basically in hell for a lot of snaps. It's so important. Seattle obviously actually had a bit of a shake-up to their offensive line in that Tremaine Ancrum Jr., the backup at left guard, we presume, was cut, and they signed a guy called Lim Manning. So bit of a shake-up there. They're already kind of churning the depth. And there's kind of the forgotten man in all of this, Griff, if they do sign Connor Williams, with what happens with Nick Harris from Cleveland, because he was presumably going to be the, veteran center. He's had 3 seasons with the Cleveland Browns. 4 seasons with the Cleveland Browns, drafted in the 5th round by them in the 2020 NFL draft. Now, he's not exactly on the big bucks, but yeah, would you maybe experiment with him playing guard? I know he did play guard at Washington in his first 2 years of college football.
I mean, it makes sense to roster churn, but they do need there is some merit in having an experienced center, even if he hasn't played a lot, an experienced center for their depth, just for the sake of the twos and Sam Howell out there when his reps, because these reps are important for Howell. If he's going to develop into anything, it's a quarterback's best friend is a center who knows what they're doing, right? For communication and stuff like that. So, Harris is an important part of the team at this point. If they bring in Williams, I suspect they try to cut, maybe get into the practice squad. I don't think you carry 3 centers. We should keep it in our back pocket, though. As we all know, Connor Williams was a guard at Dallas. He was a good guard. And Miami was like, yo, do you want to play center? And he played center, and he was even better. So it's like a good guard, great center type of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and McDonald did mention that he'd work center, as I said. So
right, yeah, and they emphasize center, but I think we should keep in the back pocket of if they sign Williams and he can't play until a month plus into the season, what if Oluwatimi just so happens to kick ass during that period? Do you want to undo that continuity? Do you put Williams, do you rotate him with Lake and Tomlinson at left guard and may the best man win? That might be your best 5 combination. I don't know. We'll see. I think they're emphasizing center right now because it's easier to write a contract for a center because they're cheaper. The average good center is cheaper than the average good guard, so that might be gamesmanship from the team. But I think they're very open to the idea internally of like Oluwatimi being good, because if he's good, what do you do? It'd be
crazy if they weren't open to that. And this is the guy who, as I said, looked like he belonged in the limited sample size of last season. And was the best college football center per
He,
that
he he
award.
he absolutely has all the traits. This is not like the little engine that could type of situation at center with some past guys, right? He
Mm-hmm.
has absolutely all the traits. And on top of that, what was the number one thing that was lauded about him by all his coaches at Michigan? His brain.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no certainty that he'll come to anything, but if he does, it should absolutely be no surprise. It's not far-fetched at all that Oluwatimi becomes a good center. Again,
Yep.
I have no certainty that he will. I'm just saying that's totally plausible that he is. So
Yep.
I don't know. I like it. I like that he's on the team. I like that Connor Williams, they're
Mm-hmm.
serious about trying to get him. So
Right. So on the subject of center, we don't know exactly what Ryan Grubb is going to task on the center in his new offense and his first time coordinating NFL offense compared to what he's going to ask on his quarterback, and how complex this system will be compared to Seattle's last year on the center, how taxing, maybe I should say. But we did hear from Mike McDonald July 25th a bit more about his offensive vision. So he used the term elegant simplicity, and he was asked where he got it, and he said it's been around for a minute, but I think it paints a pretty good picture about what we're trying to create. He also spoke a bit more on dictating terms offensively and how Seattle's going to do that. He said, well, first it comes with the mindset and how you want to play, and everyone deciding on the style you're going to play. Some of those things that we're talking about, that's our language that we're going to speak in-house. But, you talk about schematically having answers and being able to identify certain things, what the defense is doing, being able to get to those things simply and consistently so you're not just chasing your tail. And also there's going to be plenty of times when you're going to want to run your bread and butter stuff, and able to do that every defensive look they can give you. Defenses are making you get in and out of stuff based off what they show. You're really flipping the page around that and those terms. He also mentioned, Griff, about what he cares about on offense as a head coach. And he said, I think you go back to the identity of our football team. We want to be physical. We want to dictate terms. We want to be efficient. We want to operate fast for the quarterback and keep it consistent for him. We want to be able to get to a lot of things like elegant simplicity. We're not just going to run inside zone 70 times a game. We're going to try to have answers and really attack what defenses do. So, like all of these comments out of training camp, a lot there which is, hey, you know what? That sounds like a great idea. Why doesn't everyone do that? But at the same time, hearing him have, that clarity of thought, passing that for reporters, that is quite exciting. I mean, I posted like a Homer Simpson drooling gif when I watched the little snippet that the Seahawks tweeted out of those comments, because sounds great.
yeah, sounds great. I agree.
Come on, Griff, give some thoughts. Anything that stands out to you on those stuff?
I mean, I don't know. I feel like it's just a lot of it's like regular business as usual stuff, It depends on, I don't know, what do you think? Let me bounce off you.
We're not just going to run inside zone 7 times a game. I mean, we expect this. It's just further confirmation of it. But Ryan Grubb was fairly diverse in his run scheme, particularly, as we've spoken about before, that 2023 rushing split, where although they didn't run the football that often, they were drop back offense primarily. When they did run the ball, from being like a, look, you can search the tweet, I read it out the last episode, but we had 72% zone run game from the Huskies in 2022, and then 28% gap, and that went more to like 60-40-ish type of split in 2023. And just with how NFL defenses play, you would expect Grubb to keep that variety, that spice to it. That kind of makes sense, but it stands out. And then also operating fast for the quarterback and keeping it consistent with for him. I am intrigued to see what that looks like. Like, is that a get into the huddle fast for the QB? I mean, it is probably just having a good procedure on offense, which, by the way, all the best NFL attacks must have. Like, it's a requisite for the best NFL offenses.
Right.
But keeping it consistent for him, what does that look like? I'm
intrigued. That was what I couldn't really parse out, the keeping it consistent for the quarter. I mean, it's just that you could take that in absolutely any direction to the point where maybe it's frivolous. I don't know. But the inside zone thing definitely makes sense, or at least it's a morsel of information in that they want to have. I mean, kind of what he's saying there, the implication is like, okay, inside zone still is the base run. That is still going to be the main thing they do. But he's conceding like, okay, we're going to have change-ups, though. We're going to have change-up runs, which hasn't been missing the last 2-3 years. It's been there. I mean, really, that hasn't been missing since Shoddy. Like, ever since Shoddy came in, they've diversified. I wonder if Grubb adds anything, will he add more like pin pull? Because I mean, we know like there's lots of counter, there's lots of power, trap wham. Again, things that Waldron was no stranger to. I mean, he did lots of that. Grubb does slightly more. He did slightly more at UW. That's factual. But I wonder, as Grubb adapts to the NFL with his run game, would he try to introduce more like, hey, let's get 2-3 guys out on the run of pullers and stuff?
I think if you're a shotgun team, and Seattle does have athletic tackles in theory, but meaning, if you're running gun outside zone, you need tackles who can move if you want it to be good. You need tackles who can move in outside zone under center too, but particularly in gun, it seems much more important, I would say. But
he does like toss plays, right?
Well, yeah, so that's where I was kind of going with that. I think pin pull kind of accents different positions to an extent, and maybe is a way of running the ball to the perimeter out of the gun. A valid way of running the ball and stretching a defense to the outside. And
it's also an important way to be able to boot out of shotgun too. So you have to have those wide stretching runs.
Yeah, so my mind here would go to, like, for offense examples of this, the Browns. The Browns really tried, like, a lot of pin pull stuff out of gun.
Right.
And I guess the Cardinals, although
and it's interesting that they replaced Callahan with I'm totally blanking. Who was the Seahawks old O-line coach? Dickerson.
That is interesting.
Callahan with Andy Dickerson.
Yeah, I'm so intrigued. I need to stop using that word. I look forward to seeing how Dickerson, Waldron, all those old Seahawks offense coaches get on at their new teams, because they've got a lot of talent at both spots. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That will be interesting, won't it?
Anyway. Seahawks offense. So that is quarterbacked by, well, not Sam Howell. I don't think we were expecting that. You know how we feel about Geno Smith. But Greg Bale of the Tacoma News Tribune tweeted out that Sam Howell is alarmingly inaccurate at practice. The other beat reporters have been noting this too. Brady Henderson of ESPN saying how Geno's way more accurate. We'll talk about Geno in a second, but sounds like he's late with the ball. He's got bad timing and, can't hit stuff. So Seattle gave up a 4th and a 6th round pick for Sam Howell, who's obviously with the Commanders. But it sounds like right now the recent free agent signing of PJ Walker is outplaying Howell, and Sam is struggling.
Yeah. What do you make of that? One, are the reports, I mean, it could be a quarterback throwing against the 2s versus throwing against the 3s, discrepancy. And
also playing with the 2s, not playing with the 1s, if we're going to cope for him.
Right. Like, what do we know about Howell? He has a live arm that's not always accurate. He's capable of incredibly accurate throws and capable of sailing it too. His problem really, though, is his feet. It's just all over the place, not tethered to the timing of the play calls. So,
which leads to inaccuracy.
Which can absolutely lead to inaccuracy and stuff. And sometimes inaccuracy is not even how precise you are relative to where you're aiming. It's how you're anticipating things.
Yeah.
So it's not an arm talent thing so much as like a decision-making thing that looks like an arm talent thing.
Yeah, and on the feet, Mark Schofield, great guy, Mark, and a really good follow for if you're into your quarterbacks. He always says about feet, and I'm going to butcher what Mark says about feet, but he always says about quarterback feet is, if you see it as a bit inconsistent or off on tape, it's not a problem until it becomes a problem. So maybe Howell is he's learning a new offense. Grubb probably does things slightly differently. Griff, you actually picked up on the feet thing and the difference between Howell and Gino when we were looking at minicamp OTA tape. Do you remember? Like the difference in how Howell took a drop to Gino being a shorter guy. But if Howell suddenly is inaccurate now, maybe the feet, which weren't so much of a problem at Washington or weren't as noticeable, maybe other reasons for the inaccuracy. Maybe if he's more inaccurate, the feet have suddenly become a big problem.
Yeah.
I also don't know if is he missing guys after running out the pocket and doing like his crazy, I'm gonna make a play happen here, or is he missing plays within the structure of a pocket? That hasn't come out really.
True. And then the other thing with Howell is that, I mean, it's been made clear there is no quarterback competition here, and he's the backup. Right. So we don't need to dwell too much on what Howell does or doesn't do during training camp or preseason, because he's not even he's not a thing until 2025 anyway. He's not intended to be a thing until this time next year, if that. At this point, he just needs to get his reps in and develop and learn the system and be a young developing quarterback. He shouldn't have started last year. It was bad for him to start. He should have been on the bench and develop. And now he gets to do that the way he was supposed to from the beginning. So,
Neugash, presuming you're at camp, Neugash, saying he's holding the ball and hesitating with open receivers. Yeah, that's not great. But, yeah, could be a lot of reasons there. Say new offensive system again, so there you go. Now, the reason there's no quarterback competition is, of course, Geno Smith is Seattle's quarterback, and recent events league-wide kind of, they provide extra perspective on how good the Geno Smith contract is for Seattle. So the Dolphins extended Tua Tagovailoa. They gave him a $214.4 million contract extension, 4-year deal. The Packers then re-signed Jordan Love, or extended Jordan Love to a 4-year, $220 million contract. The highest paid quarterback in NFL history per Adam Schefter. A record $75 million signing bonus plus $155 million in full guarantees. We may feel a bit differently about those two deals, Love and Tua. But ultimately, the highest paid quarterbacks in the NFL on a per year basis, Jordan Love, $55 million a year. Trevor Lawrence, $55 million a year. Joe Burrow, $55 million a year. Tua, $53.1 million a year. Jared Goff, $53 million a year. Justin Herbert, $52.5 million a year. Lamar Jackson, $52 million. And then Jalen Hurts, $51. So the Geno contract, and Griff, you've tweeted on this about how, it's third year Geno as the Seahawks QB. Could we maybe, actually tie him down for a bit longer? But right now it's looking good.
Yeah, man. It's so him making $25 million a year. The rookie contracts are like anywhere between 8 and 12. He's closer to the rookie contracts than he is to the top of the market right now. Mm-hmm. I mean, at this point, 45 million is still a huge bargain. And there are lots of ways this season could go. One of the very likely outcomes is he plays really well, has his best statistical season yet. At that point, what do you do? He's going to be worth, if that happens and he were to hit the open market, some quarterback hungry team will willingly pay Geno 3 years, $150 million extension. Maybe they might even tack on a fourth year. But I think the market, having Geno with 3 seasons of a body of work, with the third season being his best year, would pay him $50 million per year on the open market. If he was younger, it'd probably be pushing 60 just because that's how these contracts work right now. But there are a lot of guys making 45 plus that he's better than. It's just his age is still being held against him. And maybe that's maybe it should. I don't know. But if he can avoid major injury, there's no reason to think that he's going to diminish physically anytime soon. I would start worrying about that at 37, 38, because that's when it seems to hit for guys when they avoid major injury. That's when they seem to regress. That's when Rivers, Matt Ryan, that's when their arms started to go. At this point, in my view, there's a 5-year window of Geno's physical ability remaining intact. I want to take advantage of that, especially if it costs less than it would for most of the other equivalent or even worse quarterbacks. So I would extend him right now because he'll only get more expensive. I would take the risk. I would give him 3 years of new money at $40 million per year. See if he takes that. Because also, if you're Geno, you'd be thinking about that. Because what if you get? I mean, this is a reality. What if he tears his Achilles this year? God forbid. He's losing out on being taken seriously forever. Basically, he'll probably have to sign a 1-year, $10-15 million deal somewhere. The Seahawks would probably cut him. You know, it would be bad, right? So you'd think he'd want some guarantees. I mean, if I was him, I would not step on the field without getting guarantees. By all accounts, he's doing really well in camp. If, you know, the whole offense is being hyped to heaven right now. So I would call your shot and try to extend him right now if I was Schneider. But maybe they are doing that behind the scenes. I don't know. Would you?
Well, Schneider's. I mean, we'll talk about this in a sec. With Julian Love's contract, but Schneider's not opposed to giving guys the, you know, extension which he perceives as, you know, being a way of getting some value. You know, not paying the premium that happens when a guy runs down the deal. I just wonder with Geno Smith, you know, he turns 34 in October. Are they, you know, in 2026 they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 veterans under contract through 2026, and now Love's been re-signed. Are they just going to say, well, we get Geno, you know, through the 2025 season. If he's good enough at 35, we just tag him. If we can't come to a deal, we just tag him. Then it's 36, and then we, you know, is that what they do, Griff?
Oh, right. I forgot about the tag.
You forgot about the tag.
Forgot about the tag.
It would be so messed up, but the NFL is a business.
Yeah.
And that could be a thing. And it does give the team leverage.
Mm-hmm.
You forgot about the tag.
Forgot about the tag. I'm like Daenerys Targaryen. I kind of forgot about the Iron Fleet.
Yeah, I got that reference. Have you calmed down now then?
Yeah, I've calmed down.
Cool. Now, the other thing with Geno is it sounds like he's balling out. Jaron Reed's saying, Geno looks great, man. He looked great last year. He looks so focused this year. His timing is good. His reads are good. Everything he's doing right now is elite. Meanwhile, all the beat reporters are raving about deep balls to DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and it sounds like in the first 2 days, Griff, the first team offense was destroying the defense, and in the third day, the defense caught up a tiny bit. But, I mean, get excited.
Yeah. It sounded like from what McDonald said and what other people kind of corroborated through their observations is that the first 2 days didn't really have any sim pressures or disguise a lot. So it was just kind of.
Okay, first of all.
Yeah.
I think that's incorrect because I may or may not have heard about Jonathan Hankins dropping into the middle of the field.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah. You did say that. Well, they did say it was more vanilla, and then they dialed it up on day 3. Like the defense kind of struck back. Either way, it sounds like Geno is just on the money, like sharp, accurate. You know, the pass rush isn't real, you know, so maybe it's easier to be confident and all that stuff. But it's not surprising that he's doing well in camp. It doesn't come as a surprise. So if this is the most locked in Geno we've ever had, we have to remember he ended the year extremely locked in. Like so he had the final 6, 7, 8 Geno games last year. He was like the 6th most efficient quarterback. So maybe it's just continuation, right, of where he picked off. So
yeah,
but it's encouraging to hear. It's stuff you like to hear for the first week of training camp.
Because there's no real reason. Like it's not like a guy you've drafted number 1 overall and you're clutching for anything to get excited about. Like this is, you can view these reports, this excitement, very kind of honest.
Yeah.
There's no real reason for bias there.
Right.
Okay, that's enough about offense. I'm sick of that. That's disgusting. We spent way too long on the offense. Although apparently Kenneth Walker out in space, being out split out wide, loads of routes from wide receiver spots.
Well, yeah, we should talk about that really quick. So there is this little excitement, like, oh, finally the running backs are going to get involved in the pass game. Grubb used his running backs way less than Waldron did in the pass game last year.
Boo! That doesn't fit my narrative. Boo!
So I'm just saying, if you were dissatisfied with the running back usage in the pass game last year, you're going to be even more dissatisfied this year, provided that the Huskies offense the last 2 years serves as any indication of that sort of thing. Also, we got guys. There are 4 targets that are either highly and gals. I meant the general neutral term of usage of guys.
Thank you.
There are 4 guys or 4 players. No, that in that case I did mean anyway. There are 4 players that are either highly drafted or highly paid that need targets.
That's
the
right.
Running backs are not getting a lot of targets. You've got 4 mouths to feed.
Oh.
It's going to be hard to even hit the minimum number that people want to see out of those 4. Someone's going to be like, this guy was underused. One of those 4 are going to take the hit. Whether it's DK, Tyler, Jackson, or Fant. One of those guys is not going to hit the fantasy numbers you want him to hit. And it's going to be because of the other 3 stealing the targets.
Yeah, my new job that involves, I can't talk about it too much, but it involves like snap counts quite heavily.
Mm-hmm.
And working out the Seahawks snap counts when you've got Tyler, and also target share, right? Working out the snap counts and target share when you've got DK, Tyler, and then as an ascending Jackson Smith and Jigba, and then Noah Fant, who's like your clear tight end who has and can do a bit of everything compared to Pharaoh Brown. It's like, where are the snaps going to be and the targets for everyone else? Like, it's going to be very difficult.
Right.
Basically, check down stuff, right?
Right. It will be
even then,
check
down stuff would be one of the other 3.
Right. There's a reality where Noah Fant is relegated to just taking checkdowns, quick game targets, and then screens. I mean, that's as they play more 11 personnel, Fant will be running, or Jackson will be running a lot more of the intermediate routes. Just saying.
We should say Corbin Smith of All Seahawks, he said on the Locked On Seahawks podcast that Jackson Smith and Jigba was getting quite a lot of intermediate routes in day 1 of the practice. So
yeah, so we'll see. I mean, Fant, I could totally see him being the choice game engine.
What's but choice? Are we going to explain choice every time we mention it? We have talked about it before.
Just those little choice routes out of the slot where he could run
4 yards, bit of yak after, that type of thing.
Yeah.
4 to 6 yards. Yeah.
4 to 6 yards, he could break out. He could go vertical. He could bend a post. What looks like a post, he could bend a little 5-yard in. Kind of looks like a slant.
Try to get him matched up on a linebacker rather than a safety.
Right.
Don't get him in press, because if he gets pressed, it's over.
Also, however much usage any guy gets is not an indicator of if the scheme is good or not. DK could have 1,100 yards this year, and the scheme could be awesome. He could have 1,100 yards, and the scheme could be annoying. He could have 1,600 yards, and it could be because the scheme's awesome. 1,600 yards because for the wrong reasons,
So how would you measure if a scheme's good, Griff? EPA?
I mean, are they business as usual on early downs, and then are they moving the chains on third downs? That's it. I mean, can they sustain their second half of season statistics last year for a whole season? That's what I'm looking for.
But what about the red zone last year?
Well, they improved in the second half of the season, the red zone. The run game did not improve in the red zone, but the pass game did.
Okay.
Anyway, we'll see.
All right, yeah. So forget the offense now. Disgusting. Linebackers. So I didn't completely lose it. but I was slightly panicked.
Yeah.
However, I need to relax. It's fine.
Yeah.
Tyrell
Relax.
Dodson and Jerome Baker cleared the physicals. They practiced day one. Jerome Baker missed day 3, which put Tyrese Knight at will linebacker per Greg Bell. But the linebackers are back, Griff, so it's fine.
Is it?
Well,
it's better to have them out there than the alternative, than the immediately available alternative.
Yeah, the guy who I keep thinking is a quarterback, he cleared his physical. I forgot his name. From Wyoming. We brought him up on the stream.
Oh, yeah.
You know him.
I knew his name.
Yeah.
I typed it recently, and I forgot it.
Damn. Now, one guy who's not going to play linebacker in Seattle is Jamal Adams. He told the Tennessee Titans beat, because Jamal signed with the Tennessee Titans as a safety, that the Seahawks did in fact ask him to change positions, linebacker, but that wasn't something he wanted to do, so he's now on a different team. Thoughts?
Yeah. Not too surprising. The way I suspect that was arrived on that idea, it was more like the only snaps we have for you are dime and nickel snaps. So you'd effectively be playing dime linebacker, which is what safeties often can find themselves doing, or the big nickel spot, which is what he did last year as well. And maybe he just wanted an opportunity to play more snaps. I think that's more. I think the Titans are giving him more of a true clean slate. So that's how I see it.
Yep.
Also, his medicals, right? That could have been part of Seattle's hesitation to let him do more.
Yep. Monjumbo, thinking of Easton Gibbs. Monjumbo, yes, I was. Easton Gibbs. So he's back as well, Griff. So we got some real competition there. Patrick O'Connell, John Rattigan, Easton Gibbs, pushing.
It's good
Baker
that
Dodson.
It's for as negative as we've been as on the linebacker duo, even though I think Baker can be good. If they're going to be better than we think they're going to be, it's a good news that they're able to get out there day one at training camp. So there you have it.
That was for a guy who is an experienced, well-practiced coper. That was rough. But anyway, safety. The Seahawks re-signed Marquise Blair. Remember him? 2019 second-round pick. This is brutal in a number of ways. So Blair missed last season with an Achilles tear. He was with the Eagles, but he didn't quite make it through. He worked out for the Seahawks earlier this week, passed his physical yesterday. So he's back wearing number 13. Not sure how I feel about that. But it's brutal because Jonathan Sutherland was the guy who was cut. And in 2023 camp, he was the one practicing with Jamal Adams out with the first team. And there was all this talk about how he could play in almost like a linebacker type role, maybe get on the field in the dime package with the first string in regular season football. And he looked all right in the preseason action he got. He had some flashes. And yet 2024, with a new staff, a new system, in July, the team says goodbye and he's cut. So that is tough on Sutherland, Griff, who I know he stood out to you last season or preseason.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a bummer to see Sutherland go. I kind of wanted to see him get another go at it, but I think they probably just viewed him as expendable, obviously, for him to be cut so rapidly, I guess. They didn't even really get him a chance to show anything in training camp. Would he have played during the rookie minicamp or the previous minicamp? I don't know. Maybe they saw enough.
I think, but yeah, I mean, why would they get Blair? Well, in terms of his athletic upside when healthy, I mean, he ran a 4.48 40, and he had, his second round pick for a reason. He had, some would say that was an over pick, but he had range, some range on tape. He could run, he could hit, although oftentimes not legally. He missed some tackles. I know that's kind of went wrong for him in terms of injuries when he was with the Seahawks, but Do you remember that 2022 preseason? He just couldn't tackle. He just looked really rough, and Seattle was deep at safety back then. But
right. He's played a little bit of big nickel. He did to start 2021 anyway. I mean, he's explosive in a short area, and he's got good change of direction.
Sorry to cut you off. Explosive in a short area, well, that's quarters, and McDonald will run quite a bit of quarters, and then I think you can ask him to play in the post a bit. So he's kind of you wouldn't think of him immediately when you think of more of the deep guy, even though, with the short area stuff that we spoke about. But I think he can do more of the deep to the close quarter stuff than he'd do the close quarter stuff. Like, you don't want him in the box, I don't think. I think you want him deep in short areas.
Agreed. Yeah, I know. I see what you mean there. He's always been an intriguing skill set. So if he's healthy, give him a real shot to make the roster. What can McDonald do with him, et cetera, right? And then again, the potentially big nickel versatility. Although
he played nickel, right? In 2022, there was like a...
Well, in 21, he did before he got hurt. The first couple of games, he was playing big nickel.
Yeah, that kind of ended his chance, didn't it? Because he was working in. They loved him as a nickel. They thought he had that type of activity that we've seen Witherspoon bring to the position, right? Where they wanted him close to the line, but it just didn't. Again, close areas, even though nickel isn't from deep, it's kind of close areas out on a slot a lot of the time, and that was how they're trying to work him in. So yeah, I guess intrigued. Likely not going to make the roster, given Seattle has some depth there. Although in the Mike McDonald mic'd up, seemed Kayvon Wallace was struggling in his fourth new NFL system and with his sixth new NFL DC. So potentially this is to push. Well, it will push Wallace. So yeah, cool. Good for Marquise Blair. He was he had some fun plays before it all went a bit wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Now, other stuff, DB-wise, Griff. Devin Witherspoon's been playing nickel, primarily, per Greg Bell. Thoughts on that? Not a surprise, is it?
No, not too much of a surprise. He'll be, when we talk about the Kyle Hamilton role, they'll be recreating Kyle Hamilton in the aggregate. And part of that will be via Witherspoon playing the nickel area. We know he can play nickel man. That was always known. But last year he showed that he can also handle his own responsibilities, which also means the run fitting responsibilities. The only thing you worry about is his durability. Can he hold up with how aggressive he is at?
What was it Schneider said he got down to by the end of the year? 170 pounds?
Yeah.
Yeah, which I think Spoon somewhat disputed, but he would. But yeah, the zone stuff was so good, like the way he would process concepts. And guys, check out Griff's Twitter for that, because he posted a lot of the cut-ups with much better annotations than I could paint right now in particular. But that made me go back and go to his Illinois stuff and be like, oh, the way he's playing that cloud there, that you can really see the zone stuff show up. I mean, watching the college tape when he got drafted, you're like, it's clear he can play zone very intelligently. But then when you saw him do it in the NFL, you're like, oh, wow, he is a guy who, thinks about football in the moment. His instincts for the position are incredible. And the fact that they're translating inside where things happen quicker, you've got less time. Yeah, that's cool. Right. Now, if Spoon is on the inside, who plays at left corner? You'd assume that Rick Willen is the right corner. He's obviously competing, and had a down year last season, but we've heard promising things. Leslie Frazier spoke about Spoon's impact there. But presumably, Griff, the first guy up would be Trey Brown, who is having a really good Seahawks training camp per Greg Bell. Now, Brown isn't your typical type of big corner. He kind of got a bit slot versatility, but the 2021 fourth round pick in a contract year is impressing.
Yeah, he's definitely the incumbent. It would be him, and then if not him, the other obvious choice would be Michael Jackson. So I'm sure that competition will be fierce. And then we know they've got the the younger guys, Nehemiah Pritchett and DJ James.
Who both, by the way, they cleared their physicals, haven't been on the pup list, so that's good.
Yeah, right. It will probably be Brown, I imagine. Brown being good is kind of like the same theory as DJ Reed being good, right? Similar play styles. Last year, I think it was mixed for Brown, and I don't use the word mixed euphemistically because so often that term is wielded that way. There was good stuff and there was some rough stuff, but not in ways that throws off his development arc. I still think the best football he's played was that 4-game starting stint that he had as a rookie. And then he tragically gets hurt, right, with that gruesome injury against Arizona. But he was playing really good ball there. I think he can get back to that. I still kind of want to see Devin Witherspoon have a large presence at left corner, though. I mean, he can still cover guys one-on-one on the outside all day long. He's just also happens to be extremely good at the nickel duties. So, and nickel's an important position. So, I don't know. I do think, though, and this ties into that charting I was doing, left cornerback position the last 2 years has been kind of a problem for the team. It's kind of been a weak spot. Michael Jackson in 2022, he improved throughout the year. You see the vision with him, but he got picked on a little bit. Trey Brown, I don't think he played poorly last year, but a lot of the completions he gave up were tightly contested. So is it like positive regression?
Which is funny, right? Because, you know, historically Pete would play his best corner on the left side.
Right. And I think that happened because, I don't know, initially DJ Reed just so happened to be really good at right corner. And then you lose him. And I think Sidney Jones kind of had incumbency at the left side.
Yeah, it's the way the developmental tract of the roster was going.
Right. And so then you put Woolen on the right side because you have Sidney Jones on the left side, but then Sidney Jones gets hurt. And then it's like, what do we do there? And then, you know, it's like, well, Trey, you go play on the left side because you've done that before. You know what I mean? It's just how it shook out naturally. And that's where they're at now. So McDonald inherited that context where Woolen is a right side corner. Anyway, we'll see how it goes. But Matty, if you were to plant your flag, who do you think ends up being the primary left corner?
Yeah, it'll probably be Trey Brown, I think.
Yeah, agreed.
It's a boring take. Mike Jackson's apparently battling out there, so he's a guy who he does. He's scrappy, but I think he's a guy who his technique kind of fits McDonald. It looks McDonald-y.
Yeah,
we'll see.
And I think that when they play cover one dime, I think Jackson could be the dime back in the slot matched up with guys. Okay. Or not even in the slot, but you could move Trey, whoever follows who, right? He could be the sixth guy out there.
And ultimately, Seattle's DB options means they should feel pretty good about, you know, their ability to vary how they match up week to week. And that's something McDonald spoke about in his first presser of camp, how right now they're playing left and right with the safeties, with the corners, but down the line, there's ways to do it where they will travel, they'll play field boundary, depends on what the offense is doing, if they motion a lot, where they move their star guy, etc., etc., and how they match up in terms of their abilities. Right, D-line, your wheelhouse, Griff. Derek Hall, well, he's an outside linebacker, but he's an edge. He's an early standout per Greg Bell. That's after day 2. And Mike McDonald said, the best of what D. Hall does is hard to tell in this tempo, but a physical presence, a guy that has some drop ability as well, meaning coverage stuff. So you can use him in a different blitz packages, very sharp, move him up and down the line, just excited to feel him out there when we have pads on, especially when we're going against other teams. Cool. I mean, the Ravens have a history, Griff, of, you know, that fourth type of rusher suddenly, you know, playing some meaningful snaps and doing well and getting production out of that. But I don't think Baltimore ever had edge depth like what Seattle has right now, where you're talking about a second-round draft pick and, you know, a guy who arguably has the best get-off when he times up and speed rush out of the whole group being backups in Darrell Taylor.
Right. Yeah. Hall can absolutely be the best edge of this group toward the end of the year. That's probably a little rich at this point,
Your
but
bend through contact pilled.
he has the best traits. He has the best trait profile of all of them, including Nwosu, Mafe, and stuff. So I really hope he can put it all together. I really think that's more a function of catching up to NFL speed. He does need to develop the handwork, but it's not a lack of coordination with him. It's just he just needs to work that area.
It looked to me last season that a lot of the time he was doing a lot of that thinking and the game was going very fast and it just hadn't slowed down for him, which is a massive cliche, but the step up, and he's played SEC football for Auburn where they did a lot schematically, but it just seemed that however Seattle's edges were being coached that year, and I think the DC Clint Hurt was their primary coach while BT Jordan did the pass rush stuff, but however they were being coached that year, it just didn't quite click for him. And yet a whole year of football where he did get hurt a bit as well. He's a bit banged up, wasn't he? But a whole, in his second year, he's just taking the leap candidate, to steal I think it's an NFL.com phrase, but he is a guy who you could expect really good things out of. And there will be snap opportunities. Like the Ravens played Clowney, I think, for 55-ish% of their snaps. I'm getting that wrong. Seahawksontape.com has that, but the next guy, Van Noy, was like 40-ish%. There's no reason Hall couldn't take 30% of the snaps, given how Seattle will have, Nwosu and Mafe as their primary two, but they'll need to rotate in and out. And McDonald mentioned Hall ability to drop. Well, in the base stuff, which you'd expect him to run for more than the 21% of snaps he did last season, given the division they're in and how heavy those teams get in their running personnel. You would think Hall could be their Sam, the guy who drops a bit. Think what Bruce Irvin did for Seattle's great defenses as a way of envisioning that. So, yeah, exciting, very exciting. Okay, rest of the D-line stuff. Byron Murphy. He has been the quickest defensive lineman off the snap in Seattle's training camp, per Greg Bell. Not only are they playing him on the outside shoulder of the guard, but Bell also reporting that he's played as a shade and over the center as a true 0-1 tech, which is, what he showed a bit of at Texas, although he's more of a 2-eye. That sounds like base stuff from Greg. But then also for one play on Friday, the 6', 306-pound Murphy lined up outside at right the end, rushing left tackle McLennan Curtis and QB Geno Smith. That's interesting, Griff. Yep.
I mean, he has a 3 technique and he can play some nose, right? I think that will be that's what we assumed projecting his college tape to the NFL, then especially projecting it to the Seahawks roster. When you've got Reed, who played nose last year, and then you brought in Hankins, it seems like he'll just be heavily rotated in and out, right? He'll be playing both spots, but primarily being a 3 technique, rushing that outside shoulder of the guard. And that's what you drafted. You drafted a 3 technique B-gap rusher. But he can still get pressure from the inside, no doubt, from the A-gap as a 1 technique or 2-eye or even 0.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no reason not to take advantage of all of it and have them cross-train at both spots.
Yeah. Yeah, my read of it is they're still in that experimental stage of moving guys around and seeing who fits where and how they rush together in the chemistry and all those things which were important. A good question for McDonald would be, who is the pass rush game caller? Because that was revealed the last few seasons. Jaron Reed did it last year. If that continues, what you need to take from that is that's the guy who's going to be on the field for like all of the pass rush snaps, basically, or nearly all of them. They won't be Byron Murphy. But anyway. So, finally, well, we should also say Draymond Jones, Griff, dropped into the middle of the field. Well, we don't know if he dropped. Let me start again. Greg Bell tweeted, Draymond Jones collided with a teammate in the middle of the field at the end of a play in 11-on-11, finished the series, stayed out the rest of practice, walked off the field with eye strap on his leg, didn't appear too serious. Why would Draymond Jones be in the middle of the field? Griff.
Are they, dare I say, dropping a defensive lineman into coverage?
No, you wouldn't do that. That would be a fireable offense. I mean,
Yeah.
Ken Norton Jr. doing it, unacceptable.
Yeah. And not only did he do it, he didn't do as much as McDonald. And not only did he do it, despite not doing as much as McDonald, he also did it to good effect as well, measurably anyway.
Yeah, although that Bills game
Who's
where
counting?
they rushed 3 and that was bad.
Wait, when they dropped 8?
Yeah.
Are you baiting me right now? They were good when they dropped 8, when they only rushed 3.
I know. Don't worry, Griff. But McDonald, Jonathan Hankins, a 325-pound nose tackle, dropped on day 1 of camp as well. So, and Draymond Jones has apparently had weight loss. So he's, he's not going to be playing D tackle, in early downs, you wouldn't think. Meaning they're dropping linemen, and there's some freak out over that, but there shouldn't be, because when McDonald does it, he does it to really good effect. So yeah, John, yes, they were. Right, finally, Griff, Julian Love. The Seahawks re-signed him. Julian Love, by the way, who received a All-Pro vote. So this is a real safety right now.
And Pro Bowl.
Oh yeah, and was a Pro Bowler, which I guess it comes up in negotiations. So he's a 26-year-old safety. He was drafted in the 4th round of 2019, and now this sees him signed through the 2027 season with Seattle. He had a 3-year extension worth up to $36 million per Adam Schefter. This really confirms to me that Mike McDonald's going to build a lot of his defense around Love. That defense requires versatility, guys who communicate, they're smart. In that Mike's Up episode, you could get the idea that Love had a positive relationship with McDonald. He actually spoke on that, saying, from an early point, we hit it off. I think we connect in a lot of ways. I'm familiar with how he calls games in his past, and he's a good guy to talk to and be around. I think we just connect, and I'm excited to play for him. There's also system familiarity carryover for Love and McDonald. He said familiar with how he calls his games. Well, Love played in the Wink Martindale defense, where some of his best football came with the New York Giants. So there are real layers of Martindale in what McDonald does, just less cover zero, more sim stuff. But the pressure path, design, language, there's carryover, which you'd know if you'd zoomed in on a Wink Martindale 2021 camp play sheet.
But you'd never do that, man.
No, you wouldn't. No one would do that. So that's a lot of money, Griff. I think the added variety and disguise of the defense, particularly compared to 2023 Seattle, where they were limited by their personnel and what they could do and what they could call and all that stuff, but also they were pretty basic. I think that helps Love and will expose him less and accent his weak spots less, accent his strengths more. But
yeah,
this is a lot, and I don't know why they did it.
3 years, $36 million. I think in the interim, it probably frees up 2024 cap space, probably.
Right, which when you're talking about Connor Williams, who we spoke at the start of the show, maybe that creates the room for that to happen.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Right. He tied for the. If we were just to take the numbers at face value, because again, a lot of this could be incentives, whatever, it could be fake money, whatever. If we just take the 12 per year at face value, that would make it, currently the tied for 9th with 2 other safeties, highest paid safety in the league. I mean, I haven't hesitated to say that I don't think he was very good last year. I don't think he's a top 10 safety. I think last year he was below average. That said, what's the charitable view of it all? Well, I mean, and it ties into the things that you said. When he gets beat, there was a theme. So I went back and charted, and you can check out my pinned tweet right now. Players who I thought was responsible for completions over 10 yards. And that doesn't take into account target, like on a per target basis. It's just, if your defense is giving up a bunch of completions past 10 yards, your structure is failing. And every defense will give them up. Seattle gave up a lot last year. So I was just curious, well, who who were the main culprits. And Wagner came in first. He had 16. This is my view of it, right? So I could be wrong, right? My charting could be wrong. Wagner was first with 16. Julian Love was 12. And then that was for guys where it was kind of unambiguously like who was responsible. And then when there was a guy who was had secondary responsibility, or it was kind of split 50-50 or even 33-33-33, Wagner and Love were at the top again. So and there are more caveats there because depending on usage, you can see more action. So again, you should take into account snap counts and scheme and everything. But painting in broad strokes, yeah, to me, Wagner and Love were the two issues in coverage last year, the main issues. And it doesn't take away from the positives that they also brought because they still did other positive things in coverage. But the theme, though, with Julian Love's blunders, there were some themes, and this can tie into that charitable view. When he got beat, a lot of them were either two things: tightly contested coverage, and it's hard to sustain completions against really tight coverage. Like that one seam route he gave up in the middle of the field to Amon-Ra St. Brown against the Lions, he was all over it. Could have been a pick. I mean, he was in position to pick it, went right through his arms, Brown caught it, right? Tight coverage. The other ones were like where he had a seam route, say it was play action, and he's biting a run fake. His issue there isn't covering the guy so much as it is identifying what's going on in the backfield, or like there's motion at the last second. He's communicating with other players. So he's not busting the assignment as much as his eyes are articulate. So in theory, you could say, well, the tight coverage could just go his way more next year. And then secondly, new scheme, new coaching staff. He still has Carl Scott, but his eyes are in the right place. He could fix those other things that took him out of position. It wasn't as though he was just busting assignments left and right. Whereas like, oh, was I supposed to be over here and I was over there type of thing, which that was Bobby's case a lot. Bobby was just doing his own thing. He didn't seem to care. I don't know. So you take Julian Love's strengths, which are definitely flashy in camp and probably in the whiteboard and team meetings, which are his football IQ. Because he was assignment correct more often than not. You take that, the communication, a scheme where maybe they take him out of more one-on-one situations and flex more his, the disguising stuff, jumping routes more. Maybe this can work. But
in one-on-ones, I think he'll be probably playing the one-on-one from a bit more depth. And I think also he'll have the advantage of a bit, generally they'll maybe be a bit more disguised to the one-on-one. It'll be a bit less obvious that it's a one-on-one, so it'll give him, skew the advantage to him a bit more than maybe last year.
Right. And another thing I will say is that in New York, he was a good safety. And it's like taking to me, how I view his 2024 or his 2023, it's like you took a career 270 hitter and he just had a down year and hit 230. To use a baseball analogy, and he could just as well bounce back next year. I mean, he came onto a new team where his role kind of wasn't really defined because it was like, is Jamal playing this week? Is he not? Am I a sub-package player? Am I a full-time player? You know what I'm saying? Like all that stuff, right? I mean, there were some moving parts last year. Again, the coaching staff contributed to issues for the whole team, but
yeah,
he was part of the problem last year. Not to say he didn't have good games. He had some good games. But I also don't subscribe to the idea that he got better throughout the year. I don't believe that either. I mean, some of his worst games were in the second half of the season.
People were just memory holding the Eagles game.
Yeah, the Eagles game was really good. The second Cardinals game was good. He was good against the Browns.
The Steelers game was abysmal.
The Steelers game, he was the worst player on the field, bro. I mean, he was worse than Tariq Woolen, who had some horrible missed tackles. I mean,
which, a lot of things were wrong that game in terms of how they were fitting the run and everything.
It was system failure, right?
Such a poorly coached game.
But I mean, it's almost trite to be like, oh, they lost because of Julian Love. I mean, the whole team had their...
Yeah, and that ultimately came down to coaching.
Right, right. But it's just to say, like, there is a charitable view, and I'm open to it. He could totally play well this year. I just don't think he played well last year, and I don't think he earned this deal. But get your money. I mean, by all means, get paid.
No, good for him. And it's interesting that the team felt that they needed to do this now. They'd apparently been negotiating in the spring, so...
Yeah, I mean, they clearly like him in the building. So, I mean, obviously...
they must love him. And, to your point on Kyle Scott, he's been in and around that. Oh,
right.
Yeah, Trevor's saying about the cigars. Yeah, that was that was funny.
Yeah. Also, he played well against the Titans too. That was another game where he truly played well.
Yeah.
So I mean, he had good games last year. It's just can he be more consistent with it? He was in New York, so.
Now Leslie Frazier on the Move the Six podcast, he mentioned, remember, he's an outstanding defensive back. Over time, you guys are going to be talking about a lot. And Mike McDonald said after the signing, I like a lot about his game, just really excited for him. I think it's a shout out to him and the type of person that he is, the type of football player, definitely the type of guy that we want here. Just excited for him. He's worked his tail off and hopefully he's found a home here in Seattle for a long time. Then on what he's learned Julian Love can do, he said, I think it's open communication. I think Julian is a guy that will shoot you straight and hit you between the eyes on stuff, and you respect that. He has a great perspective on what he's been through, what he expects. Temperature from the locker room can translate some of the messaging. I'd say that in addition to being a great football player. So, to me, it sounds as though Love could be the green dot. I actually guessed this after watching the mic'd up, just seeing the vibes between him and McDonald, and it just came off like how a coach would speak to a dude you've coached with for 10 years almost, who has been your Mike linebacker. And the Ravens in the past have had safeties wear the green dot. Chuck Clark, Eric Weddle, even other safeties maybe. But yeah. Given what the safeties are asked to do in the system, and, we expect Love to be on the field for, if any player on the back seven is going to have 100% of the snaps, it's probably going to be Love and Spoon. I think Love as the green dot is very invisible. I can see it happening.
Envisionable. You can envision it.
Why do I want to put a G in there?
Envisionable. Is that even a word? Did you make that up? Did you
Easy to envision.
Yeah. Did you adjectify a verb? Anyway.
Possibly. Anyhow, we'll be back next Saturday, same time. No, we won't. We'll work out something. I can't do that. But we'll work out something of when we will be back with more Seahawks training camp stuff. Let us know what you thought of this one. Great to see so many of you people in here. We appreciate you so much. Training camp is happening. Can't wait for actual football because there's all this tantalizing, the teasing, but we want to see some hitting, catching, real stuff. Appreciate your comments. Lots of smart stuff going on. Sorry, I missed some of them as well. Griff, closing wisdom, thoughts, anything?
Next time we talk, let's chat about this movie called Master and Commander.
Yes.
Or